This video brought to you by Highland Titles, the perfect last minute Mother's Day gift, 10% off with code Filmento.
Hey, these people could tell a fake when they see one, all right? You have to believe the lie you're selling. You belong here. You're one of them.
Oh, I think I pushed it in too far. Is that okay?
After being stuck in development for the last 14 years, Sony and PlayStation's Uncharted movie is finally upon us, mostly to remind us of what we didn't get. We didn't get the director of American Hustle or Bumblebee or 10 Cloverfield Lane. We got the director of Venom. We didn't get actors to most embody the characters. We got commercially viable personalities who mainly just play themselves.
What's the other ship? Plus the value of the ships themselves, which you can't even put a price on. This could be a game changer for me. If I can apply that technology to my inventions, we never have.
Overall, was the game franchise grew to become one of the best in the business, we got a movie that was at best mediocre. And the craziest thing is that despite all that, I kinda liked it. And the reason I'm telling you that is because it reaffirms Uncharted as a video game movie. See, the Uncharted games were a big part of my childhood, especially the second one, meaning that it was very untraditionally easy for the movie to entertain me. All it had to give me was characters I remember. All it had to show me was sequences I recognize. I mean, all it needed to do to get me hyped was play a few familiar notes of music. Just as I talked about in my Mortal Kombat video from the opposite perspective, that's not actually a good thing, because it means that Uncharted isn't a movie as much as it is a video game movie suffering from the effects of the video game movie curse. That's a topic we've covered many times before, but it essentially means that the movie's video game origins ultimately devalue it as its own separate thing. This can, for example, be something very superficial, like forced Easter eggs that for hardcore fans can be cool.
What the hell happened to you two?
Fell out of a car that fell out of a plane?
But for casual audiences make zero sense and just deviate from what's going on.
Something like that happened to me once.
Okay.
But superficial stuff like this aside, the curse also carries much bigger, more harmful effects that affect Uncharted on a much deeper level, from the characters and their relationships to the action-packed sequences to the emotional side of the story. It's almost as if the quality of the movie on all these key storytelling fronts becomes worse just because it's based on a video game. That is the video game movie curse, and despite my own bias of liking the movie, that is what we're gonna focus on today to add on to what we've discussed before. Here's a few key reasons why Uncharted is yet another victim of the video game movie curse and how to hopefully fix it in the future. The first video game movie problem with Uncharted is that it relies too heavily on its characters' pre-existing names instead of introducing them and their relationships in a worthy way. For example, Nathan Drake's journey begins as a bartender in New York, and his introduction is actually pretty okay. Essentially, he has a meet-cute moment with this customer who grows fond of him.
You're kind of weird, but kind of cute too.
And then he steals her bracelet. Doesn't return it, doesn't end up having to apologize to her, just steals from her, which highlights his personality well and also isn't something we usually see in these movies. But after that, the movie then introduces Victor Sullivan, and it's one of the most mundane intros you'll ever see. Basically, Sully has appeared in the bar and for no discernible reason tells Nate that they should work together.
Victor Sullivan. You can call me Sully. I got a job coming up.
And then steals the stolen bracelet. After which Nate very effortlessly breaks into Sully's apartment where we get exposition about the treasure as well as Nate's past.
I know the legend that his voyage wasn't about exploration, it was about finding that goal. But you know my brother Sam?
We were getting close to Captain Elcano's tomb, but Sam was sure we...
After which Nate goes home and has a very on-the-nose change of heart and decides to help Sully find the treasure, which then leads us to even more exposition about this upcoming auction that holds the MacGuffin they need.
Key that unlocks the chamber where the infamous 18 hid that gold.
Cool, but the legend said there are two keys, one for the captain and one for the crew.
And the issue is that there's no kind of meaningful event or experience to meaningfully construct a relationship between these two that we could care about. They kind of just meet and agree to do this heist. I mean, even in the heist, they don't actually do anything together. Nate goes to hang out in the lights while Sully does his own thing. It's not really a shared experience. Like, I don't feel like I'm watching younger versions of Nate and Sully going on a journey here, as much as I'm watching a young guy suddenly go on a journey with an older guy in a way that's honestly pretty weird.
This is what you do, you stumble into bars trying to pick up an accomplice.
I'm offering you a real big one. I need another set of hands on it.
It's a little late to be prowling around these parts, huh? Why don't you have a seat right over here for me?
I mean, it's almost as if the movie expects me to accept and care about the relationship between these two just because their names happen to be Nate and Sully. To better highlight what I'm trying to say, look at the introduction of Chloe Fraser, which is her literally just walking up into frame to talk.
Hey, Chloe.
Who the hell is this?
Nate, I'm a friend of Sully's.
This might be good enough for me as a fan because Chloe is the one piece of casting they nailed, but in the context of the movie, not so much. Like, nothing meaningful happens here to meaningfully introduce Chloe and her connection with Nate. She just inexplicably steals the MacGuffin from Nate's bag.
You let her take the cross?
And then there's a fun little foot chase. And then she's like, yeah, okay, let's work together.
Which church?
Like, there's something missing here. And as an example of what that something could be, look at Finn and Poe in Force Awakens. These are two strangers facing circumstances that force them to join together in a meaningful enough way that immediately makes us care about their connection.
I'm Poe Dameron. Good to meet you, Poe. Good to meet you too, Finn.
Or as an Uncharted example, look at Nate and Elena Fisher in the first game. They immediately have to work together to survive a pirate attack, which creates this bond between them. Bond that then makes it that much more impactful when Nate decides to abandon her despite what they just went through together. And in the same way, this movie should have built its characters and their bonds around something instead of simply relying on their pre-existence from the games. Don't just have Nate and Sully meet and spout exposition. Have something happen in a way that brings them together.
What the hell do you think you're doing? He's just a kid.
Now there would be a discernible connection we can care about as they begin their journey. Now it would carry much more of an impact when Nate finds out that Sully's been lying to him the whole time. That maybe the entire shared experience that connected them was a lie orchestrated by him to get close.
You're okay, kid. My friends call me Sully.
The point is that in the sequel, do not introduce Elena Fisher by having her just show up to say her name.
Hi.
Do something with that introduction. Build it around a meaningful shared event that establishes her as a character and connects her to Nate either positively or negatively.
Nate!
They're still coming with us.
Because if you don't quickly give the audience any reason to care about your video game characters and their connections in any way, most non-video game audiences are not going to care. The second video game issue here is that most of the sequences in Uncharted are redos of what the games have already done in a much better way. For example, the movie begins with young Nate breaking into this museum with his orphan brother Sam, which is essentially the opening from the fourth game where we had to first break out of the orphanage by sneaking around nuns and then jumping around with Sam.
Come on, Nathan. I gotcha.
Except here, pretty much all that sneaking and jumping has been cut out to the point where almost only the exposition remains.
First guy to sail around the world.
You just took all the credit.
You know what Magellan was really looking for? We got pirate blood in our veins. Descended from Sir Francis Drake himself. Mom and Dad, they're gone. His map is worth a fortune.
Meaning that we have the same sequence designed to build the backstory between these orphan brothers, except as a lesser version of what the game already offers.
You see this? We want this. We love this. We need this. But this, yeah, we don't need this.
And in the first 2/3 of the movie, this is usually the case. There's an auction heist sequence where Nate and Sully have to steal this MacGuffin cross needed to find the treasure, which is also taken straight from the fourth game. Except that in the fourth game, the heist actually involved real challenging work, like infiltration and pickpocketing and cooperation and battling the main henchmen and avoiding detection, and we even had to fight our way out at the end. Whereas here, we just walk into the showroom and then walk into the control room and then play Tarzan while Sully takes the cross like candy from a child, and then we literally just walk out. That's it.
Bye, have a great time.
Like, what a way to go under the bar set by the game. You know, there's a fun little foot chase between Nate and Chloe in a warm, culturally rich environment, which I preferred in the third game where we're chasing the bad guy and where it was much more intense and interactive with the environment. There's a tomb sequence where Nate and Chloe follow old underground tunnels, which is a hallmark of the games, except here there are no real puzzles or gymnastics or anything like that involved. All they actually have to do is turn a key and then not drown until Sully turns the other key. I mean, it's cool that they mix it up with a modern setting.
Let's go. Okay.
But the tomb itself doesn't really offer anything the games haven't already done better.
I got an arrow pointing this way.
The eye of Providence. I say we go with God.
But there's literally an arrow that points this way.
The plane sequence is very visually cool and exciting, but not necessarily as much as a whole as in the third game, where we also had to fight our way onto the plane and put up much more of a fight to stay on the plane, and where surviving the fall was only the beginning of our problems. Here, we're kinda just on the plane, and we're kinda just on the crates, and then we're kinda just falling, and then we're kinda just at this holiday resort.
Hello.
Like, don't get me wrong, as a fan, I personally thought this plane sequence was amazing. I love how they made it more about the initial survival on the crates. I love how they kept the fall as a continuous shot like in the game. Overall, this sequence brought up so many great memories that I was smiling the entire time. The point I'm trying to make here isn't so much about whether the sequences are good or not, but rather more about whether they're good enough or not. Because how can you justify asking the audience to spend $12 to watch something when they can right now go watch a much better, more expensive version of it on YouTube for free? How can you justify making a lesser version of something that already exists? That is my point. And to be fair, in the third act, this issue gets solved. Essentially, Nate and Sully find the hidden ship treasure when the bad guys suddenly show up to airlift it out, which is a combination of the first and fourth game until this happens.
Follow that ship!
Right, so now we finally get Uncharted in a way we haven't done before. Nate and Sully fighting mercenaries on a ship while the ship is flying in a way that keeps messing with gravity, that's Uncharted but different enough to be new. Sully climbing into the other helicopter to fly them around until at the end he sacrifices the gold to save Nate, that's Uncharted but different enough to be new. The sequence as a whole is Uncharted that you can only see in the theater.
As in, not a video game movie that's less than the game, but a movie based on a video game.
And that's what the sequel and all video game movies should strive to be. Don't try to repeat the sequences the games have already done, because odds are you won't be able to live up to them or justify your movie's existence. Instead, identify the signature elements that make the games what they are, and then do something different with them. The third video game issue with Uncharted is that it's too much fun, in that it doesn't take itself seriously enough to be emotionally compelling.
Yeah, we should go your way. We should go your way.
The first side of this is that most of the challenges the heroes face are way too easy, as I touched on. All we have to do to steal the expensive MacGuffin from the auction is play Tarzan for a bit and put on a jacket.
Addison wanted me to take that to the vault pronto.
Okay.
Thanks.
All we have to do to get to a restricted church area is walk down there.
Oh, kid, I'm watching our back. What if the nun comes down to get you?
All we have to do to get on the plane is just appear on board. All we have to do to stop Chloe from immediately effing us over is, well, nothing. You know, the challenges are way too lighthearted. There are almost no obstacles where you can feel dread that the hero might not actually make it through them. The second side of this is that there are no consequences to anything that happens. When we come across deadly traps in a tomb, it's just for laughs.
Well, it was 50-50, so I made a guess.
A guess? That could have been our heads.
Well, clearly she turned the keys the other way.
When we fall out of a plane in the middle of nowhere, there's a holiday resort right there. When Nate gets betrayed by Sully and Chloe, he still immediately works with both of them. Overall, there are no real-life repercussions, the heroes never get injured, and their relationships never truly crack, just like in a fun kids cartoon.
Whatever this is, no, I'm done.
Huh? You don't have to apologize to me now.
She only cut us out because she knew you were gonna cut her out.
You're still harboring feelings for that girl who knocked you on your ass, huh?
But the third and most important side of this is that the movie in general avoids negative emotion. For example, the reason Nate goes after the treasure is because apparently Sully lost Sam while looking for it, and so finding it might lead them to him.
I think if we find that gold, there's a real good chance we find him too.
Emphasis on the might, because there's no actual evidence of that. Plus, Sam's disappearance doesn't seem to carry much of an impact on Nate's life anyway. The movie does propose that the treasure is important for Nate due to his childhood.
Look, I've been dreaming about this since I was a kid.
But not really, because they cut out all the core elements of the game that made that story emotional.
That journal, it was our mom's.
First map of the whole world is worth a fortune.
So in other words, Nate goes after a treasure that isn't actually important to him to look for his brother without any evidence or evidence of desire to find him. And what could a more emotional version of this be? Well, what if you spend more time to establish the brothers' poor childhood conditions and how they always talk about that one treasure being their destiny? What if you show that Sam's disappearance still weighs on Nate's life and that he still dreams about fulfilling their childhood goal? What if you have Sully offer evidence that Sam is out there and needs their help? Now, Nate has an emotional drive to go on the journey. Now, the truth about Sam hits much harder because it was a straight up lie all along.
Sam got shot.
Now, there's much more there to emotionally invest in. As another example, look at Chloe's betrayal in the tomb. Essentially, there are these intimate moments leading up to it that bring these two closer together in a great way. Like how Nate saves Chloe's life and how Chloe opens up about her bummer past.
One day I found a bronze statue covered in gems buried under a bridge. Showed it to my father. He sold it. Kept all the money. We never saw him again.
And after all that, she betrays him, which is very effective, except that the furthest that betrayal goes is a whack on the head. And again, consider a more emotional version of this. What if you lean into the fact that Nate believes the map to be his only chance of finding Sam? Now he wouldn't just hand the map over, he would fight for it. Now Chloe would have to do something, maybe even to the point of half-accidentally shooting Nate to injure him. Now the truth about Sam would emerge in a much more emotionally loaded situation. Now the relationships would truly break and require time to heal. There would be challenge, consequences, there would be real human emotion. I don't know if this specifically is the route to take, but the point is that currently there's nothing here. There are no scenes that make you sad, no scenes that make you cry. It's all just light-hearted fun to the point of being an emotional flatline. I keep seeing the same thing in all these movies and it's so weird because Mortal Kombat is at its best in a tragic beginning. The Uncharted games are very emotional, with tough topics like having to choose between your normal life spouse and your adventure life brother. They make you feel.
You lied to me. For weeks. If you were killed, I wouldn't have even known about it.
It's different this time. I have to save him.
Whereas here, you mostly feel nothing, which is the exact thing that Martin Scorsese, for example, would call not cinema. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know this. As long as Hollywood keeps treating movies like Uncharted as these fun little video game movies, that's how long they're gonna keep being video game movies. That right there is the crux of the video game movie. Curse. But there's one last thing, guys. I have some sad news to share, which is that my dog just died, and it hurts. It's like this empty space in my chest. But anyway, if there are any fellow KSI fans here, you might remember the video where a fan made him a lord by buying him a tiny piece of land in Scotland. Well, the same thing happened to me last month. I now apparently own a square foot of Scottish land, so from now on, I'm called Lord Filmento. I could put it in my name, on my credit card, I could even use it on Tinder if I needed it.
We're a big boys here because you're about to get a proper Scottish welcome.
Turns out you can just do this through a local company called Highland Titles. They own a bunch of land in Scotland which they sell in tiny pieces to allow people to title themselves lords and ladies, and they use the money to preserve the area as a nature reservation where you can even visit your land. It sadly doesn't actually make you real royalty with a real mansion or whatever. But just like Uncharted, I thought it was a fun little last-minute Mother's Day gift idea to make your mom feel good about herself.
I can't wait to hear all about it.
Anyway, I got in touch with Highland Titles and got them to sponsor a 10% Filmento takes care of your mom discount, so for anyone still scrambling for a Mother's Day gift, check out the link below. Oh, and look at that, my dog's actually fine, it's right there. Cool.